Well, Mayor Zach, welcome back to Mayor's Monday. Hate to talk about the weather again right out of the gate, but we had a little bit of a gloomy day, so we don't have a field trip here. I'm starting to get antsy. We've got to have one of those here.
Yeah, it's been a while
soon.
since we've been outside.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been outside. So hopefully you'll have something coming down the pipeline. I know you've got one big thing coming down the pipeline. We'll talk about it a little later. But first, city crews. How's the morale been for the last 6 weeks or so as we've been battling weather?
Well, they've put in a lot of hours. I think we've racked up 1,000 hours of comp time that they've banked since the most recent rash of storms have come through our area. So they've been working a lot of extra hours, and so we're doing what we can to give them breaks and to make sure that their schedules aren't too disruptive to their lives, but also to try to make sure our streets are open for our residents and for businesses. So the morale is always challenged this time of year, and I know that just like everyone else, those guys are very much looking forward to spring.
The good news is, though, I mean, even as you're coming into town, you start to notice bare ground in areas. As to whether or not that's going to change over the weekend, who knows? But we're starting to get rid of some of the snowpacks. I mean, if nothing else, cabin fever has to be easing a little bit here.
Yeah, those warm temperatures we've had lately really have gotten people excited. I haven't seen anybody in shorts, so we know it's not that warm. But we know in Wisconsin, if it's above freezing, some people like to be brave and put shorts on. Not me, I think we're really excited. The snowpack is going down. We were obviously concerned about as the lakes thaw and the ice comes off the lakes and the snowpack to the north, as well as any extreme rain events. Our section of the Wisconsin River, being that it's dammed on both ends, is controlled by the Wisconsin Valley Improvement Corporation, and those folks do their best to make sure that the flows through these areas are managed so that way we don't have major localized flooding. But we've had some extreme flooding events, a couple of 200-year floods, a 500-year flood, all in the last 15 years. So to say that the climate is changing and the planet is changing is an understatement. We've been facing that here firsthand. The other thing that we're concerned about, obviously with snow removal budget, is we've spent 65% of our snow removal budget this year. So for the entire calendar year. So we have more winter to go between the rest of March here and into April. Hopefully not into May. I'm even hoping that we don't have to say that in the month of April, but we also have the fall and winter of the rest of this year. So it's safe to say we're probably going to be dipping into some financial reserves to cover our snow removal budget costs this year. So not only is crew morale a concern, our budget's generally are on an average, a 3-year average basis. While we know what our average years have been like, the last number of years have been pretty mild. So we've been saving those dollars. We don't spend our snow reserves. We do keep them segregated for future years, because at some point we know we're going to get another year where we're going to tap into those reserves.
Yeah, having that foresight is always a good thing. And you talked about flooding in there a little bit, and that's actually something that we spent a lot of last year talking about with your riverway improvements, your new recreational trail near Aspirus Riverview.
Right.
So you actually kind of planned a little bit for that when you built up those retaining walls to help beef up your flood protection along that region.
Absolutely. A big component of that project, as we talked, was riverbank stabilization, that if we don't work to stabilize those riverbanks, we're going to lose the park spaces along those riverbanks to the river. We could also lose the infrastructure. There's a lot of underground sanitary and water infrastructure that we don't ever see because it's beneath the surface. And then the roads that are adjacent to those areas. So it's really important that we stabilize the riverbank, especially when we know spring events, we're going to have some flooding. That's natural, but we can't have regular events back to back that really wreaks havoc on infrastructure as well as our riverbank stabilization.
So are seeing some return on those projects, not only from a recreational standpoint, but from a practical standpoint as well.
Yep, that was the whole purpose.
Well, we've been talking, of course, about Matala Co. We're inching closer. It looks like we might be getting a groundbreaking here soon. At least we don't have to wait for all kinds of snow to melt before we get something like that. You talked and finalized a few details last week. Hey, give us an update. Where are we? When does it? You may be getting an idea of when they'll be breaking ground in the Rapids East Commerce Center.
Right. So mostly what the discussions we're working through right now is everything is agreed upon through a developer's agreement. So the company agrees to do this, the city agrees to provide this, and that gets encapsulated basically in an agreement. And part of it is the land sale. So we haven't sold the land to them yet until we get agreement on certain things in a developer's agreement. Some components of that are a rail extension that we're going to agree to build a rail spur so that they have access to the rail line of Canadian National. to get their products to and from, the materials to and from the facility. There's also a cash grant for the number of jobs that they're going to create with the facility. They're committing a minimum of 80 jobs, and the average wages with that 80 jobs is about $25 an hour. So all of those incentives and all that support will get encapsulated in a developer's agreement, and then we'll execute on that. So that's now been considered by the City Council, and we hope that we'll have an execution on that agreement very soon, and then the groundbreaking can happen. There's also a number of other infrastructure improvements around the property. We're doing some power upgrades with our municipally owned electric utility out at the site. We Energies is working through some natural gas improvements. The Midwest is really underserved with natural gas, so we're concerned about the supply in the area of natural gas. So we're hopeful that the supply won't impede their growth plans here. But We Energies also has to do some infrastructure to the site so they can be adequately served. They're, as you can imagine, when you've got casting pits 100 feet below the ground that are all melting and extruding this aluminum, they use a lot of natural gas as a power source. So we want to make sure that there's not any issues from the infrastructure side of things as well.
And those improvements as well, I'm guessing there's something that will help improve that everybody in Wisconsin Rapids will benefit from. If you're talking about improving your electric and natural gas utilities, that's something that everybody uses.
That's right, especially because we have some vacant land around that property yet. So if you get a certain hub of power, a substation, or some other improvement, there's other users that can benefit from those things. And that park is particularly well served for other high wastewater users because our treatment plant has some capacity yet. So we're very excited about the Matala CoInvestment. We know that a number of their customers are in our area, but they have more capacity than what's already been sold and spoken for. So perhaps there's some other business opportunities for folks to be co-located or be located near this plant.
Yep, and as you mentioned before, including or bringing in a new sector as well into the economy kind of beefs you up in that department and kind of makes you a little more recession-proof, as I like to say. Right.
That's right.
Of course, and again, as we look forward to what else is to come next here in the next few days, you've got some upgrades that you're talking about, not only athletics facilities-wise at the Wisconsin Rapids Lincoln High School, which of course you're a graduate of, but you're also talking about some improvements to Athletic Park as well, which is going to benefit some other baseball teams, not just the Rafters, but your Legion program and others as well.
Right. So Witter Field, obviously the Rafters, we have an agreement to use that facility with them. We're hoping that we'll get an extension here in the next year or so. We're at the nearing the end of that agreement, and we have no reason to believe they don't want to be around for a lot longer. So we're excited about that. But yeah, they'll be making some field improvement or some improvements to their space that they occupy. And then we've also talked about the aquatic center, the pool project that has been proposed for just outside the ball fence at Witter Field. And so the council's continuing to consider that project, whether or not they want to perhaps break ground and move forward with a project and continue to fundraise while some of the construction activities get underway. All items that are still on the docket really for the city council to decide.
Yeah, and that's quality of life projects too. That can really be a benefit when you're looking at bringing people like Matala Co in here. They don't just look at what you're going to offer them as business. They look at what everything that you have to offer adds up to.
That's right. If you have a boring community, one, they're going to have a problem attracting families and attracting workers, but also that plant management and the corporate folks that are investing in the community, they don't want to visit the place. So I think it goes hand in hand, most definitely. And we're very excited to be continuing to invest in the quality of life in Wisconsin Rapids, knowing full well that it not only benefits the city of Rapids, all of the surrounding municipalities, but also the cities in north central Wisconsin. A lot of spouses, dual income earners, will live in one community and work in another. And so we recognize that the labor watershed, or the labor shed as it's called in our region, that cities are drawing on workers from all across the political boundaries in our area. So the extent that we can do our part in Wisconsin Rapids to attracting people to central Wisconsin is something we're very interested in. We're continuing to explore ways to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to see your community being stagnant at all like that. It's something that is a big piece of that giant puzzle that you try to put together on a daily basis from right here in this office.
That's right. You got to walk the talk. And I think if we're not willing to put our money there, we can't expect businesses and industry and families to do the same. And so I think it really starts with the city. Not only the city, of course, we'd like to involve other stakeholders in philanthropy in some cases or other private donations. But sometimes it takes the city to lead first, whether it's maybe with planning, sometimes with a small investment, but also just to restore the confidence in the community again.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to add, Ben, before we let you go for
I think
the
it
week?
does it, Michael.
All
Thank you
right.
for the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We always appreciate these little trips down here. And again, fingers crossed one of these days we'll be able to get outside down
Let's
here in
hope so.
Rapids. Absolutely.
Thank you.